right, Fangs and Infernos, we're right back at you. We're going to have a little bit more fun right now as we are going to talk to this year's Icon Award winner in Robert Kurtzman right here at New Jersey HorrorCon. Again, thank you so much for rocking out with us. Thanks for spending some time, and thank you for supporting the show and supporting all of the actors and everything they do. So, of course, first, Robert, thank you so much for giving us a little bit more of your time.
Thank you.
Congratulations are very much in order.
Thank you. That's very cool. It's it's a really cool sculpt. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So first and foremost, what got you into, monster makeup, designing, and, putting it all to film?
Well, grew up a horror fan, of course. Dabbled in artwork growing up, and I was always drawing monsters and barbarians and half-naked girls, So, yeah. And then, I just kept reading famous monsters and Fangoria as a kid, Starlog, shit like that. And so I was always just interested in filmmakers, following filmmakers like John Carpenter and Spielberg, whatever, and Walter Hill, and I always wanted to be a filmmaker and get into it, but it was really the art that enabled me to break in and do, and to learn how movies were made, actually working on a set, but I was doing the makeup effects. Yeah. So, and then it segued into directing from there. But that was it. I grew up on late night horror host shows and stuff. And, as a kid, and just always gravitated toward it.
Absolutely. Sorry. Oh no problem at all. Absolutely. When you were getting into, working on, makeup and special effects and things like this, was there a specific, director that you were aiming to be like, I really want to do makeup on that person's movie? That's an ultimate goal.
It was, for me, it was John Carpenter.
I
was such a huge fan of John's that, thank you so much.
Show me a picture.
No, you'll get that no matter what. Yeah. It was, John, because I was ever since Dark Star, but I saw it on Precinct 13. It was one of my favorite movies, and then I just started following his career and everything he did, and of course, The Thing was a big influence on wanting to do this stuff, and then eventually we started working with John, and our first film with him was Body Bags, the anthology for Showtime, and then we just started working with him on every show after that. We did Village of the Damned and In the Mouth of Madness and Vampires, Ghosts of Mars. So it was so that was a big deal to me. I was so giddy when he came to the studio. I was the geek who had to bring out my Assault on Precinct 13 poster and stuff and get it signed and whatever. I got the Thing poster signed and all that, But anyway, that was a big deal for me. But also there was all the other filmmakers that I grew up admiring, Toby Hooper and Wes Craven, and was lucky enough to work on a bunch of movies with those guys. It was cool. So.
Awesome. And before I kick it over to Devil, one movie I wanted to touch base on that I just think is so cool is how did you come about working with Sam Raimi for Army of Darkness? Because, the Deadites, that's quite a task to create those characters.
Yeah, well, we started out, I was working for Mark Shostrom, and we did Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
So me and Howard and Greg and Mark, we were on set doing the effects for Evil Dead 2. And then eventually, years later, Sam contacted us about doing Army of Darkness. And at that point, we had our own company now. So that's how that came about. And then we did a whole ton of stuff with Sam over the years, like Hercules and Xena and those shows in New Zealand. And then, K&B still does stuff off and on with Sam, like they did. Last one, I think, was Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, we know Sam and Bruce and Rob Tappert, the producers of Evil Dead, since then, and so it's kind of like a family, we just did a film with Bruce, Black Friday, and Bruce kind of didn't know anybody on the film. He was offered the movie, wasn't sure he was going to do it, didn't want to play Ash again. You know, he had to change the character up, and from what I understand, he was like, "Well, who's doing the effects?" And they told him we were doing it, and he was like, "Okay." Then he signed on.
Yeah,
So because he had a familiar face there,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
it was like, so, and then you know he also produced that as well. So anyway, it's like a family. I mean, it's kind of great working with people over the years. You may not work with them for a while, but then you work with them again, and it's like no time has passed. It's like
yeah.
So anyway,
I was gonna say, yeah, with that too, people that inspired you and stuff like that, especially with the makeup side, like people like Stan Winston and stuff like that. Those guys, like, I always loved that, like when you think of some of this stuff, you look at these iconic movies that like you guys did with K&B and stuff like that. Like, do you look back and you're like, oh my God, this is like when you look back at your filmology, you're like, holy shit, I've done a lot of really like iconic films that so many people, especially in the horror genre, are like your part that your name is stamped on those.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna say right time, right place. It's the I started in '84 doing this stuff, so I kind of got the tail end of the '80s and the '90s, and those were there's so many films done then that they're considered iconic in the horror genre. So I think I was just lucky enough to get in the business when I did, and be involved with those filmmakers during that period of time. So I think it's just, I mean, it's really different. The business has changed so much today.
Yeah.
But it also, makeup effects were so kind of new at that point. With movies like American Werewolf and The Howling and stuff coming out, there's a lot of innovation being done. And I think that that made it even more special for everyone.
Oh, yeah,
and
for sure.
That's why people gravitate toward the movies of that era over like today's stuff, where it's like CGI.
Definitely.
But
That's why I love it. Like being as the age that we grew up in that time period where everything was done, physical. You know what I mean? The puppeteering. That now it's with CGI. Not that I'm not completely against CGI. I understand it.
Oh no, it's a great tool, and I use it as well as a filmmaker.
Yeah, but I prefer that real makeup and stuff like that. But also doing the makeup and stuff like that too. You also dabbled, into other stuff. Talk a little bit about doing the more like the directing side, like with Wishmaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Wishmaster was my second film. My first film was The Demolitionist. It was this kind of low budget female RoboCop ripoff, And it was back in the day when there was a lot of video companies in the day looking for product, and it just so happened I had to take on something, and we morphed it a little bit, but the company said, yeah, we'll do it. It happened really fast, and it was actually during From Dusk Till Dawn. We were shooting From Dusk Till Dawn when I got a green light on Demolitionist.
Oh, nice.
So, and then that just rolled into Wishmaster. It took a few years after that to get Wishmaster off the ground, but it was just, I always wanted to direct, but it wasn't until I started storyboarding and shooting second unit on some of the films. Like I did second unit on Jason Goes to Hell, and that's when I knew, like, look, I can do this, and I'm doing it anyway. I'm storyboarding segments of a movie and figuring out the effects and whatever. So it was just natural progression for me. So
yeah. And then like with cons and stuff like this, I love the fact that they include people like yourself and V Neil, who are more of that like behind the scenes makeup versus like the artists and stuff like that. What's your take on like coming to these cons and meeting fans and doing that, being on that side of side of the film industry?
Well, I always love it. One thing is I get to see, meet other people, not just the fans, but other filmmakers and artists and actors. But it's also a lot of times, like, I hadn't seen people in years that I've worked with, and then I get to see them again and hang out, and catch up. So that's always great. But what's really cool is seeing like how many people appreciate the work that you've done over the years, and how like the next generation of people who are starting to see these things and become fans, like even with Wishmaster, it's like it's 20 25 years, but it seems like there's a whole new group of people that love it and come,
Oh yeah, I mean
So-
that's why I loved about I know you weren't a part of it, but I loved it with V with being part of it, like Face Off, where it was kind of like bringing that makeup artist to the forefront, and you might who knows that someone might see when your stuff and like and stuff that you do or something that they do, and inspiring that next generation to kind of want to do that.
Right.
So I like stuff like that where you can kind of bump up that hey, this is what it is, and it's like, hey, who knows who you're gonna make.
Well, yeah,
something
even if a lot of filmmakers, like Kevin Smith being one of them, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of filmmakers that wanted to do makeup effects, and that was what they thought they wanted to do, and then they became filmmakers.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys like J.J. Abrams and different people, and
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro. He was an effects guy initially.
Yeah.
But they gravitated toward what we do, but that got them interested in filmmaking in general.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
So-
And then and then a quick one too. Was there somebody like a director that you worked with who was like the biggest, fondest, best person you think you worked for throughout your industry that was like one of your favorite people to work with as a director wise?
It's Sam.
Sam?
Sam Raimi. Yeah.
Awesome.
I always enjoy working with Sam. He's a blast. Even on the big movies where he's under a lot of pressure and whatever, I still enjoyed stepping back and kind of looking over his shoulder and watching what he was doing, And so Sam's one of my favorite people. So
Okay, awesome.
I just love working with him. Very cool.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
one more question, because we don't want to hold you too much up for your from your fans and everything. We had talked about, of course, practical special effects from back in the day, as well as CGI now that you use as well. And just what's your personal take on Nosferatu, since it's a more recent movie that really kind of hits both sides of that,
Yeah.
where of course you've got Bill very practicaled out, but then with like Lily Rose's, exorcism, as I refer to it, kind of like parts of her movie where CGI comes into effect there.
Yeah.
Like that movie kind of meets in the middle of both of those worlds. And how do you look at it?
Well, that's why I think the best movies are the ones that mix the medium, really well. And I always say this, and Marcy always says this too. But like Guillermo del Toro films, they have a lot of CGI, but they always have practical, and they mix it very well.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly, what makes sense to do practically and what makes sense to do digitally.
Yeah.
So, there's certain things you just can't do. You can't have a guy in a suit without a whole wire rig that goes a mile down the street with him jumping. Yeah. So it's the same with dinosaurs. Like we thought when we saw Jurassic Park, we kind of had this tape that went out at that time. It was like somebody snuck out the test, and we all went, oh shit, we're never going to do big puppets anymore. But then you can't make a big puppet walk down the street, it's like you can do the head and whatever. And so it made sense. When it first came out, though, everybody thought CGI was the next big thing, which it was.
Yeah.
But they made everything CGI, and that's when everybody was like, "Oh man, it's like a shitty cartoon, and whatever." and unless you have the money to do it really well, sometimes it just looks like what it is, like Sci-Fi Channel shit.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, but I love it. It's a good mix. It does solve problems. It's one thing it does help out with is digital stuntmen or say bullet hits and stuff.
Yeah.
So many times those gags go wrong or cause injuries or whatever, and it's nice that you don't have to worry about it. Like I don't even know why they would have real gunfire in movies anymore.
Well, yeah, even
it's like
even like Clinton's talked about that, like in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, like him and Robert Rodriguez talking about like when they're in the embassy shooting up the embassy, all that's digitally done because you can't shoot up the real. It's a real Mexican embassy.
And you can't mess up the walls and it's like in Scarface, they of course put squib hits all on the walls and blew everything.
Yeah.
But they built a stage, a big set.
Yeah.
And if you're shooting in somebody's house and you have a shootout, you can't blow their walls apart.
Yeah.
So you do it digitally. So it makes sense. But,
No, absolutely. But Robert, thank you so much
thanks
for
for
some
having
of your
me.
time,
Yeah,
man.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate you making time
You
for
guys are
us.
awesome.
Again, congratulations so much. Thanks in Infernos. We love you guys so much. We'll be back with another fun one soon. And thank you so much for supporting the artists and everything that they're doing. I'm Vampire. He's Devil. She's Mrs. Vamp standing over there. But more importantly, he is Robert Kurtzman. Horns up.
thank you.
Fangs out.